I want to sort of contextualize this moment and sort of explain to our viewers how we got here, maybe going back to even the Arab Spring. But of course, we have seen various chapters of conflict between the Syrian regime, the government, and various versions of opposition forces, even the rise and fall of ISIS, for example. Just kind of catch us up to how we got to this moment.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on this historic day. I mean, Syrians are waking up to a day now where the Assad regime and its family will no longer be in control of Syria for the first time in 54 years. So this is really a historic change for Syria. Most of the Syrian population alive today know nothing but Assad family rule, and it has been uniformly across that 54 years a brutal rule. Since, as you say, 2011, with the outbreak of the Arab Spring, Syrians took to the streets initially to demand political reforms. They were met very swiftly by brutal suppression, machine guns, tear gas, helicopter gunfire. That then spiraled into a civil conflict in which the regime has embraced what it has called an Assad or we burn the country approach to suppressing the opposition. And that, frankly, is why it's taken 14 years to get to this point. But ultimately speaking, despite 82,000 barrel bombs, 340 chemical weapons attacks, 500,000 dead, 130,000 people missing, the Syrian people didn't give up. And we're seeing the consequences of what had been over the years a fraying, a decaying, a fragmenting regime that collapsed very quickly after a series of triggers and obviously this rebel offensive that's taken over the past 12 days.
And millions of refugees created over this time as well. And Charles, you know, I think one of the things that some might look at here is they might ask, where are Assad's allies in Russia, in Iran? Obviously, we know they are preoccupied in their own wars. Russia, of course, with Ukraine, Iran, and its fights, proxy fights back and forth with Israel through Hezbollah as well, which, of course, has been devastated. Can you just explain the significance of those allyships? And did their, I guess I'll call it, lack of involvement, at least in this past week and a half, as far as what I can see, how significant that may have been in allowing an opportunity for the rebels and opposition groups to move as quickly as they have through the country?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, Russia rescued the Syrian regime from almost guaranteed defeat in September 2015 when it launched a military intervention. Iran, in fact, had intervened directly and through its very powerful proxy Hezbollah in 2012 and 2013. And so throughout the majority of the Syrian crisis, both Russia and Iran and its proxy partners had proven themselves wholly loyal and determined allies of the Assad regime, ensuring that Assad was protected from any kind of defeat or indeed even an internal coup at one point. What's been most surprising, as I think you're pointing out, is that both of those allies or partners of Assad haven't really been by his side in the way that most might have expected over the past 12 days of this big opposition offensive. And I think there are a number of things at play. I mean, first of all, as you say, Russia is distracted by events in Ukraine, Iran, by a lot of the regional developments we've seen play out since October the 7th. But I think also under the surface, both of those governments have expended an enormous amount of resources to protect Bashar al-Assad. But Assad has done nothing to play ball throughout a series of diplomatic initiatives over the past 18 months that if he had been somewhat pragmatic, frankly speaking, we would not be sat here right now having this conversation. The Arab world normalized their ties with Assad in the spring of 2023 in expectation that Assad would give some concessions, make some reforms in the country. But in fact, he did none of those things, and the situation in the country spiraled to a much worse situation. And then earlier this year, Turkey, which controls an enormous amount of leverage over the Syrian crisis in being the primary supporter of the opposition, reached out and expressed an interest in normalizing ties with Assad. And in exchange for that, Syria and Assad insisted on the kind of maximalist demands that made that an impossible scenario of normalization. So really, Assad burnt a lot of bridges, even amongst his own allies. And I think That is why ultimately they didn't do everything in their power to try to protect his seat in Damascus.